Hi, I'm Justin Nickelsen with Nickelsen Home Inspections. I'm sitting here with Michael, and Michael is our newest inspector. He's been with us for a year and a half, since June of
2016.
June of 2016. He's, like I said, the newest of our inspectors. We have four full-time inspectors right now, and a crew at the office. So wanted to introduce Michael to everyone and just kind of get to know him a little bit. So where are you from? Are you from around here?
So I'm a transplant, honestly. I was from California. And yeah, don't let anyone hold that against me.
Like everyone else.
So I came up here when I was 12, and this has been my home ever since. I did
Okay.
a little bit of traveling when I was in my early 20s, actually, to North Dakota. But this has been my place.
Okay, right on. And what have you been doing for the last 15, 20 years?
So to begin with, I was in the construction trades. I worked a little bit of roofing. I built some trusses, did some construction framing.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I actually moved on to the healthcare, the fitness industry.
Okay.
So I was actually in managing gyms, front end work typically at the desks. Got to meet a lot of new people. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Transitioned from that into home inspecting, actually. So it was quite a bit of a different change.
How did you what brought on the home inspection thing? Did you?
Oddly enough, I responded to a Facebook post, and
Okay.
I think it was you
Oh,
who
okay.
actually said we're looking for an inspector who might actually be.
This is when I used Facebook. I don't know.
No longer a Facebook user. Took off. I
Took too much
responded
time.
to his ad saying that he was looking for someone who had some moderate computer skills, could speak well with people, and who had maybe a little bit of construction background, but that wasn't necessary. So I was like, well, 1, 2, 3, I've got most of that taken care of. So I sent him a message, and the rest is history.
Right on. So let's talk a little bit about the process of how you became an inspector. You know, what obviously well, not obviously, your first license was, your license in Washington and Oregon.
Correct.
Okay. Just briefly for the audience, which of the two states, in your opinion, has the stricter requirements?
In my opinion, I would probably say Oregon.
Really?
It just felt like some of the testing that I did. I mean, I was able to do things in Washington because of the testing that I did in Oregon.
What about the course requirements?
Course requirements were a little bit more lax, I
Okay.
would say. Yeah.
So how much? I guess phrase it this way: of the two states, how much time?
Okay,
was
Washington was
invested?
definitely more of an time investment.
I guess the background of this is Washington has a requirement of 120-hour live classroom education, and then 40 hours of field
Right.
training.
Yeah.
And Oregon has requirements; they're just not quite as strict.
My past experience in construction was able to help. I got recommendations from them, so there wasn't actually a lot of coursework that I necessarily had to do to become an inspector in Oregon. I just had to pass a couple of requirements, pass the national test, and be licensed with the company. So yeah, the differences between that were pretty vast.
Now, Washington is a little bit of a Johnny-come-lately here because Oregon was licensing home inspectors for years before Washington. When I started doing inspections, and when our company started doing inspections, when our former company started doing inspections, there were zero requirements at all.
Wow.
You could basically just decide that you were doing home inspections and more or less just do them.
Yeah.
Just advertise that you were doing them. And it was a little bit of an odd time. I mean, I remember this one time, my father and co-owner of the company, Kurt Nickelsen, he did an inspection for somebody in Longview, Washington. And I think it was like 6 months or a year later or whatnot, he ran into the card at a real estate office of the buyer of the house that he had inspected less than a year before that. And it said right there on the card, 20 years experience. And I remember I used to have the card, and we used to kind of chuckle about it because here was someone who didn't do inspections, and we did an inspection for him, and then yet less than a year later, he had a card with 20 years of experience on it. So, so things have been improved upon since the law went into effect some years back in Washington. We were among the people that had. We went to lobby. We went to Olympia when they were going through the process of having public hearings on the proposed law, and we were a very strong advocate of the law. So we do have requirements now, which is a huge improvement. And Washington is now a little stricter than Oregon is. But you take the class, you go into 40 hours of field training, which is usually, if I understand it correctly, more or less when they take the students out into the field, they're going to houses that are non-transactional situations.
Correct.
Okay. And then you spend how much time at the house?
Basically just a group of people, depends on how many the inspector can get out there.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll have, maybe a couple of hours spent going through, showing maybe how to write a report, but they're not getting the experience to write the report, they just kind of watch them write the report.
So, and then do you go back to the class to write the report? Okay, and in that 40 hours of field training, how many houses did you go to?
Maybe 3 or 4.
Okay, so your 40 hours of field training as part of the licensing requirements can be completed basically by going to a non-transactional situation with a group of people and doing 3 or 4 inspections.
Correct.
Trust me, in 40 hours, we do a few more inspections than 3 or 4. So I guess I want to know, certainly having these requirements is helpful.
Yeah.
It's a huge improvement, and as far as I know, it's among the strictest requirements in the country. There's Texas and Pennsylvania and California, and they have their own requirements, but Washington has pretty strict requirements. You take the class, you do the field training, you take a test, the National Home Inspector examination, and you're licensed. In your opinion, does that prepare someone to go and inspect a $500,000 home?
No, I wouldn't want a person inspecting an apartment after that, I don't think. It was a good experience. It gives you a lot of the basics and kind of fills you in on, what's expected, what the scope of an inspection is, but it can't replace experience, essentially. Okay. So if you haven't gone out to a home before and seen these components in the real world, you have a theoretical understanding of what it should look like, what's going on. You're not going to know the things that I know now, thankfully, or I'm learning.
Sure.
Because it's not possible to show that in a classroom, really, and with a couple of inspections, a 40-hour process, you don't have the time to absorb enough information to really give a valuable product to the customer.
And which could get into a whole different subject, but you're talking at that point about the distinction as well between experience versus book learning. Now, I mean, I'm the people here can't see it in the background. I'm a huge fan of books. I only have about I only have a few of my books out, and I think that there's at least 500 out here. Most of them are in boxes. But I'm a huge fan of book learning. But imagine if someone's doing open heart surgery.
And they've just read that from a book, essentially.
And they just read it from a book.
Or, hey, they had 120 hours in class, and they were able to dig
right.
in.
Now, you have, since you've done that, you've... and some before as well, you've participated in over 1,000 inspections.
Correct.
Okay, and that's conservative. That's the easy. Okay, at least 1,000 inspections in the last year and a half.
Yeah, not to mention the continuing education credits as well.
And this guy is a continuing education credit machine. How many in the last year?
109, I believe.
Just in the last year.
Just in the last year. Before that, the total I think is 140 something.
Okay, and this is beyond the state requirements. So Michael works in our company, and we believe really strongly in education, and not just education, but experience. And so Michael has a year and a half worth of experience 1,000+ inspections been performed and has done more continuing education credits than the education requirements that the state initially requires. And we consider Michael a very good inspector and still in training for our company. Those are our standards. Hopefully in the next few months you'll be doing some more solo work. But right now if you run into Michael, he'll be either with Kurt or me or Chase. What would you say, just briefly, maybe a couple examples of some of the differences between the book learning, the coursework that you did, and what you've seen on site? In other words, what would a consumer, when they're making a determination between hiring somebody who has got a license, they're legally capable of doing an inspection, maybe they even own their own company. Most inspectors are just single inspector firms. What would be the difference between the experience that you now have and that situation where somebody has taken the class, done the 40 hours of field training, taken the test, has the license, and can be hired to go and do a legal inspection? What would be like some of the differences that you've seen that you couldn't have anticipated?
For example, like noting pieces of equipment that might be malfunctioning in a way that's not exactly obvious. Going to a water heater and knowing to look for bits of corrosion at the connections, knowing to look for leaks at the very base of the tank, or things that when they say, hey, there may be a water heater incident where there's a big leak. It's not always obvious.
Yeah.
You don't always have a huge glaring amount of water popping out. There's signs that you have to get to know, like moisture staining and things like that.
Could you even cover in a 120-hour course that covers all facets of the home the number of different heating systems that you would see in a normal month?
No. My continuing education credits, thankfully, and getting work experience helped with that. But upon leaving after the 120 hours, I wouldn't have been able to tell you the difference between an oil-fired, well, I might have been for an oil-fired furnace, but hydronic systems, for example, the Apollo systems that we run into. There's no mention of that during my classwork.
So, in theory, then, someone could hire an inspector, they're legal to do an inspection, and the inspector could be standing in front of a system that he has or she has no understanding of at all.
Correct.
Has never seen once.
Unless they've done outside research or continuing education or had, someone experienced.
Well, even then, they would be just, not to poo-poo the reading, but it would have just been theoretical knowledge.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know. I would definitely approve of some sort of an apprentice system, or basically where you have an experienced inspector to lead someone after they've basically left school, because it does give you a foundation, but a foundation isn't enough to be a good inspector.
Is a foundation a pun?
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, I'm punny.
Very punny.
Okay, so yeah, any other examples that you might have?
Trying to think, just basically things that manifest themselves, knowing to scan a roof line to make sure that it's not sagging.
They don't cover that type of thing.
No. There's coverage of older roofs and what materials are which, but you don't really get those small tips like, hey, is one of the sides sagging slightly? Do you have slipped tiles? Look at the edges of the tiles to help you determine what the material lifespan might be, or what the usable material lifespan might be. There's a lot of determinations that we make that might not necessarily be in the scope of the home inspection, but it helps us be a better home inspector by providing a service that we can tell you approximately how much life your roof might have remaining, or we can give you a good idea. And if we don't know, we know who to refer you to.
Yeah, and I mean, when you take the course, they talk about conditions of the roof and whatnot. Now that you've done over 1,000 inspections and you're asked to give an idea of the age of the roof, it's probably a little bit different.
And it's a lot more comfortable now, yes.
You're a little more comfortable.
A little bit more confident.
Yeah. So you can be confident that when you hire our company, and whether it's me or Kurt Nickelsen or Chase or Michael showing up at your house, or your commercial property, and we're doing either a solo inspection or we're doing an inspection as a group, that every person there is not only licensed and has met the minimum standards that the states of both Oregon and Washington require, but may have over 1,000 times the actual experience of somebody who was just licensed with the state. And that experience that we've accumulated over the last 20 years, collectively we have almost 40 years of experience as home inspectors in our company, is something that is vastly beyond what the state requires. Do you have any other things that you want to talk about?
About does it for now.
Okay. All right. Well, if you would like to give our company a call, in Oregon you can call 503-502-1495, or in Washington 360-907-9648. And we perform inspections from the coast all the way into the high desert, Wenatchee, Bend, Portland, Florence, Astoria, Seattle, Olympia, Bremerton, and everywhere in between. We're happy to literally go the extra
extra
mile for our customers. In the last month, we've done inspections in most of the cities that I actually just mentioned.
Honestly.
Commercial and residential properties. So give us a call if we can help you with your home inspection needs or your commercial building needs, and we'd be happy to serve you. We'd be honored.